Thank you. My apologies to Sandy and Connie for having the wrong Zoom meeting ID on the agenda. I apologize. It is 6:15 on the button. I will call the meeting to order. And I will ask for approval or ask for any adjustments to the agenda.
Motion to approve.
I will second. Any more discussion about the agenda? All those in favor say aye.
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 Agenda is approved. Consider approving the previous meeting minutes.
Motion to approve previous meeting minutes.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So we have an approval of the previous meeting minutes. Received guests. Connie, thank you for attending. Do you have anything that you'd like to address the Police Advisory Committee about that is not currently on our agenda?
Yes, I do. I have two things, actually. I tried to get on the agenda get on the meeting last month, but that didn't work. So anyways, my first thing, I'm sorry, you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. My first thing is the officers refusing to enforce the ordinances. I don't know why that's allowed. The city council makes the ordinances and the officers are supposed to enforce the ordinances. I don't know why they're allowed to refuse to enforce.
Connie, sorry, Chief, I know what you're talking about, Connie, but could you provide a little bit more context for the rest of the committee?
Well, there's a specific ordinance that I was involved with, which seems to be taken care of now. So, but the refusing of the ordinance is, that was the Casella trash one. But then, of course, then there's the riding on the sidewalks. There's quite a few that don't get enforced. But this was particularly, they refused to enforce it. And this is over several months. They absolutely refused to enforce the ordinance. So anyways, I did want to bring that up.
And I'm sorry, Connie, what was the ordinance that the officers refused?
The noise ordinance at night, to making, emptying the trash before 6 a.m. It's been brought up at city council several times. And when it was happening, I would call dispatch, very nice lady usually. And I didn't even see that it got put on the call list when I looked. So it's like I got totally ignored. And then of course she was very nice and she talks to me, not like the other man who used to, he was very not nice. But anyways, she's very nice. And she told me that they just refuse to enforce it.
Okay. What's the second item on your list?
My second item on my list is, I know it's not going to do any good, but I've got to discuss this. It's the bringing of the prisoners to St. John's Barre. We have the courthouse is in Barre. We have a jail that really isn't that old, that had cells, that when the courthouse, they could bring them up to the courthouse. I'd like to know how many prisoners have been brought to St. J. I'd like to know who brings them. I'd like to know how much that costs. And so, of course, when they're in St. J, they're getting, of course, Zoomed court appearances, correct? When they were in Barre, they got to go before the judge in person. And let's see. I guess that's all. Used to go together, the court system and the justice system. But the way it is, when you're dragging them up there, and you know how inhuman that is, to bring a poor person up there that's got nothing and to drag them up to St. John's Barre and leave them there and expect them to be able to get back to Barre by themselves. very inhuman in the winter. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Is there either Council Wazazak or Chief, would you like to respond to either of these items?
I can respond to both, actually. So, Connie, I do apologize for the noise disturbance. Once it did come to my attention, myself and the city manager worked on it my understanding is your issue is with Casella emptying the garbage at ladder 1, which is next to the Tilden House, which obviously caused you to be disturbed. If I'm not accurate, please correct me, but I believe
No,
that was
that's
the
correct.
issue.
That's correct. They were doing it at 3 a.m. and
So,
so
we're,
and it does seem to be resolved, and I'm very thankful of that. And that it was an ordinance. That's what really drove me insane. It was an ordinance, and they said no.
I understand that it was an ordinance, and again, I apologize if anybody actually came out and said they refused to
So, anyways, okay,
enforce the
thank you.
ordinance, but we weren't going to issue the folks tickets that were driving the trucks that were emptying those
They,
containers,
they
based on the fact that, for one, the ordinance, there's a clause in the ordinance for exceptions. And one of those exceptions, it could very well fit into there. So we wanted to work with Casella instead of just issuing violations to them for that emptying of the trash. Does that make sense?
Yes, but this has been brought before the city council once before you got here, and a second time, I guess, another time. And so they don't seem, the city council who writes the ordinances don't seem to feel that way when it's discussed at city council.
Well,
That's
I
all.
I can't speak for the council.
I know,
Um,
but I'm just saying I watch the meetings and that's just my impression. So anyways, that's,
No, I understand.
like I said, it's
Part of the concern that I have, a lot of what we do, we operate under, I'll call it the 3 E's: education, engineering, and enforcement. We don't like to go out and just whack people with tickets right off the bat, when there's other alternatives to get there. And in this case, it would have been unjust, in my opinion, to issue tickets to the drivers that were doing their job when we could do the education route and work with Casella to try to alter their routes. And again, I apologize if any of my dispatch staff said that we refused to enforce that ordinance. But once it was brought to my attention, again, the city manager and I worked to resolve that issue, and I'm glad to hear that it was resolved.
yes, Nicholas was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And
And relative to the jail,
yeah, I know, not gonna get anywhere, but I had to, it's just, it frustrates me very much, and would have
I
happened.
want you to understand that, operating the jail comes with a certain element of liability. And that liability is too great for us to operate under the circumstances in which you have to operate a jail, and they weren't following the standards to operate that jail. If somebody were to, God forbid, pass away in our custody, we would be at the end of a losing lawsuit for that.
So
because
all these years, we operated the jail illegally, all these years before
I don't
that?
want to say it was operated illegally.
I don't mean
but
illegally, but under the,
There's standards,
not,
there's standards that say, for instance, you have to have a face-to-face observation every half an hour with that
yeah,
individual. Excuse me. And they weren't doing that because we didn't have the staffing. When the officers are out on the road, they don't come in to make that every half an hour observation, and they were getting by saying, oh, well, we observed them on the monitor. Well, you could not tell from the monitor if somebody was asleep or in medical distress. So that's just one of the minor liabilities, well, it's a major liability, but one of the minor incidents that we looked at when we went down this road. And along those same lines, with the criminal justice reform that's going on, there's less and less individuals that are actually being incarcerated. Believe it or not, there's a lot of individuals that get cited and released, or if they have a warrant out for their arrest, instead of getting lodged like they used to, they get an extra extended opportunity to come into court, if you will. So there's less individuals that are actually being incarcerated. And when we weighed all of that against the liabilities, it just did not make sense to operate the jail.
Do the sheriffs take them up?
The sheriffs, if they have to be transported from the jail somewhere else, then yes, the sheriffs would pick them up. But as far as when we arrest people that do go to the jail, we do bring those individuals to the jail.
Okay, that's good. I didn't know that. I just wanted to know. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And just Connie, just so you know, this is Teddy. The one thing that I don't remember if we actually, did we definitively vote on closing it? Like was that, I just don't remember whether it was something you told, but regardless, the council supported, including myself, supported this move. Because, you know how I feel about prisons, Connie.
I did. I talked to you about it before.
And I'm sure that the conditions in St. Johnsbury are not up to my standards. But I would say that the conditions in the Barre City Jail were also not what you or I would consider humane in that way, and that's not a fault of any individual member of the police department. I think, as the chief mentioned, the capacity to adequately care for these folks is just not there within the Barre City Police Department. The capacity to care for those folks is in St. Johnsbury. So while it's not an ideal solution, I don't want to paint, it was four cells back there, four?
There's 6 cells.
Six, yeah. There were 6 very small concrete rectangles that had a very uncomfortable looking bed in a very small amount of space in the back of the Barre City Jail. So, like I said, while I'm sure that you and I agree
They're holding cells. They were just holding cells.
sometimes there were folks just by circumstance that would end up there for multiple days. And that was not good for their physical or their mental health or the resources of the police department. And so those are some of the things that played into the decision to close that jail and transfer folks up to St. J.
Okay, I know.
All right, Sonny.
I don't know all this. Goodbye. Thank
Thank
you.
you for logging in.
Thanks, Connie.
Okay. Next item is Councilor Ross's app.
Yes, so happy New Year all. The budget is going. That's all I can really say right now is the city is in, I don't want to sugarcoat it, the city is in pretty dire financial straits as a result of the flooding. All of the departments were affected, including the police department, and if the committee wishes, they can talk more with the chief about the specifics of the cuts that were part of the budget proposal. The city is going full force in lobbying the state government, the legislature, and the governor to provide direct financial assistance to the city so that we can properly maintain services. But there are cuts everywhere right now, and planning is very difficult. The council has set a goal of a 5% increase on the tax rate, but just to give folks an idea of what we're dealing with, if we were to just maintain services, that's not adding anything new, but if we were just to maintain services with the money that we have available to us now, with the impact to the grand list that we have now, we'd be looking at a 16 to 19% tax increase, just to keep doing what we're doing. And that's without any state aid. So we are going full court press on trying to get as much money out of the state government as possible so that we can minimize those disruptions of services. But it's not good. And I don't want to sugarcoat anything. It's not good. And
To that, FEMA money, is this a temporary thing because it takes so long for the funds to become available? So the hope is that whatever deficit there might be in the current budget would be made up once the FEMA money starts making its way back to the city, or is that not the case?
Potentially, but not completely. So, you know,
There's a
we
match.
have to put everything up front. We're all talking reimbursements. There are
Yes.
grants that come from FEMA.
Right.
So there is a cash flow issue, but even with the FEMA reimbursements, we're still looking at that $1.3 million deficit. Because of and that's largely driven by the impact of the flood on the grand list.
Right.
We're estimating a 4% hit on our grand list, and we think that's pretty conservative. We think it could be higher. And that's what makes the state money so important. And I was just hearing about the flooding that happened in 2015. One of the FEMA cases from the 2015 flood closed like 3 months ago. So the city got its money back, yeah, but it took us 8.5 years to get there. So we're not counting any of those chickens at the moment. And then the other thing that's relevant to the committee, as I mentioned to Kristen earlier, was that this coming year will be a renegotiation of the union contract with the Fraternal Order of the Police, who represent the Barre City folks. And so that negotiating team will most likely be myself, the manager, the chief, and our labor attorney, Scott Cameron. I don't know if we're ready to get anybody else or not, but yeah, and we'll keep you posted as that's much work. Oh, right, yeah, Rick Taft is usually there.
Typically just one council member on that committee?
Yeah, well, I don't want to go into too much of history, but historically, there actually have not been council members, like before the past few years. There have not always been council members as part of the bargaining teams for the city. And there were, and that wasn't just true for FOP, that was for all of our unions. And then eventually it got to a point where, not because anyone was doing anything wrong, but the council would set broad guidelines for negotiation. The manager would go and the bargaining team would negotiate something, bring it back to the council, and we feel like, okay, this is not what we talked about. So we felt that it behooved to have a counselor be a part of those bargaining teams. And I'm the only one who's volunteered to do that. So we keep appointing me to do it, and every time one comes up, I say, does anyone else want to do it? And no one says anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's the way it's been for the past well, really since 2020, so the past 100 years. Yeah.
Anything else? Any questions for Teddy?
What was it again? I think it was you, manager Scott Cameron.
Rick Taft?
Rick Taft, from the Charter
Chief.
I think that's it.
I mean, the council eventually, or it's different in every city, isn't it? So does the manager have the final say on that, or does the council have to write it? The council does, okay, okay. All right, if there's nothing else, council, we'll move on to the chief.
All right. We still have 5 vacancies. With the hiring freeze in the city, Nicholas has allowed us to move 2 individuals that were already in the process forward. Unfortunately, one dropped out, so one is in background, and I'll be moving to either move another individual that made it through that process to the background, or run another process to identify an individual for the 2. But we're holding those 3 vacancies if we fill these 2. The way that works, since it's such a lengthy process, they wouldn't even be a city employee for quite some time anyway. Outlook on the budget as the way things go.
So you've been down for long before I became involved in the police advisory committee. With these,
Yes.
3 to 5 officers almost consistently.
We usually, historically, it's been my experience not only here, but where I came from, usually you always have 2 vacancies that end up always seeming to carry that, either through attrition, once you get one filled, one goes, or however that works, but it's usually on average about 2 vacancies that you end up carrying for most police departments that I'm aware of.
So if you use that number, the additional, if you will, 3 vacancies, how do they affect your ability to schedule?
So right now, I hate using the word fortunate in an unfortunate situation, but fortunately, 3 of those vacancies came from the detective division. So we are down to one detective right now.
Okay.
We do have a process that's going to commence and be completed by the end of January to identify another detective. There are 2 individuals from patrol that put into that. I'm only going to be able to fill one right now because of the scheduling issue. But so fortunately, those vacancies came from detectives and not patrol. Only 2 of the vacancies were patrol.
And once the patrol officer, assuming one of them moves out, is that going to have?
So it'll have a very slight impact because both of them have put in, and they're currently on day shift, which is fully staffed. So it's not that detrimental to that one shift to have one officer move over. Our most impacted shift that has been affected by the scheduling issues for the vacancies is second shift. The officer that came out of the academy, Sarah Curtis, is currently in field training. Once she gets completed through that process, she will be moved to second shift. So that'll bring them back up to 4 as opposed to 3, and they should have 5. The transparency section of the website was updated with all my 2023 analyses. Those include the use of force analysis for 2023, pursuit and roadblock analysis for 2023, the summary of complaints and investigations regarding internal affairs, and canine deployments. And again, that's all for the calendar year of 2023. We're currently working on a 2023 annual summary of all activity, which is all encompassing, which will show all the proactivity, the reactivity, if you will, calls for service, how many arrests were made overall, kind of generic report to let folks know what's going on. And once we get that done, it'll be up on the website as well.
Can you share any highlights or lowlights with us?
I will share the highlights. The highlights of the use of force is that use of force incidents have decreased over 2022 and 2021. Pursuits have decreased as well. So those are good highlights. And on those analyses, we look at the statistics. One of the disturbing statistics in the use of force analyses is that, and it's no surprise that mental impairment as part of the contributing factor to the use of force has risen. Conversely, alcohol being a contributing factor has decreased, which is kind of surprising because since I've been here, I've noticed that there's alcohol problem very safe.
Yeah.
One of the other disturbing notices about that I made was that the what I call no factor or unknown factor has increased, which means that people just, for whatever reason, they're not paying attention to the police. They feel that they can just resist. And that doesn't surprise me because of the political climate and everything that's happening in the world, but nonetheless, it is concerning when you look at it. Let's see, I am working on the, every year, as you know, we do the award and recognition process. Right now, we're in the nomination phase for the 2023 awards. Once that's complete, they'll go to an award committee who will agree or disagree on the awards and vote on them, and then we'll have our awards and recognition ceremony sometime in the spring. I'll give you an update on our building. As you know, we've been considerably displaced on the first floor, and we're told by the contractor that he should be mostly complete by January 25th, and the flooring will be starting to be installed on that day. That said, we were supposed to move dispatch out of the training room into the upgraded center last Friday, and unfortunately Burlington Communications had an issue because Burlington Police Department had several sites that went down, so they couldn't come here and they look at. And fix that, so we're waiting on a date, hopefully this week, to move them in. It's been very frustrating, understandably, for them working out of that, one room, the way it was set up. So we're looking forward to that. And hopefully, by the end of the month, I'll have a better, grasp as to whether it's gonna be complete or not by the end of the month.
Was it just, took X out, put X back in, or were you able to make some changes? Since you had to redesign everything, where you had the opportunity to redesign?
We have the opportunity to make some changes, unfortunately, with the financial situation that the city's in, we can make only one very minor change, and that's, we're moving, the door and the wall where you actually enter the secure part of the police department is being moved down 4 feet. And that's gonna encompass that interview room that was there, which will be now inside the secure area. So that's the only change that we could make. There were 3 or 4 other changes that I wanted to make. Part of that was in the capital improvement plan, which has also been sidelined due to the financial situation. So we'll see what we were gonna look at for 25, 26, and 27 maybe moved out for further years, but we were just gonna make it more functional, and up to standards of what a public safety facility should do. Body cameras, we have, all of the equipment has come in. We are going to be, hopefully, by the end of the month, we have to set them all up and get everybody trained, so hopefully those will be rolled out here by the end of the month. If not, I'm pushing for February. Very important to get those out and in use. And I have applied, or I haven't applied yet, I am applying again this year for the John Law Scholarship for the sergeants, to send them continuing training into the FBI LEDA courses. There's 3 courses in a series that will get them what's called a Trilogy Award. And once they complete all that, it'll take 3 years for them to complete, obviously, because there's 3 series and I can only send them, excuse me, to so many.
Are those
Every year.
ones in Manchester?
What's that?
Are those the ones in Manchester, New Hampshire?
No, those, you're probably thinking, sorry. Those are, they're either Hartford PD, Essex PD, or South Burlington PD, so they're all local and in-state. But the FBI LEDA program comes here as host sites. Very good training, and they've been learning a lot. They've been very well received, if you will.
Going back to the body cams, yes, just remind me, is that a trainer thing, or does somebody come in and all of your staff get trained up?
No, we are going to train them. I used to do it where I came from, so I know how to utilize them. You could have the company come in and set them up and do the training, but it's about $10,000 to do that, so I opted to just do it myself. And if I get in trouble, I will call tech support.
Yep.
So that's how that's working.
Okay.
We do also have the local sheriff here, Mark Poulin. He has them now, and there's a couple of features that I'm not familiar with, but he said he's willing to assist because he's got to know how to do that for the features that I'm not familiar with, the auto tagging, and there's another feature that they have as well that's new since I've been doing it, so we'll get those up and running. That's all I have for my report.
Chief, any other questions for Chief?
This is a minor question, I'm just curious. On the use of force analysis, you have firearm displayed 3% versus firearm pointed 3%.
Yes, so you got the thing up? Good for you.
Yeah, all right, nice.
You like that?
That's all, that's all that.
Yeah, put a lot of work into it. So under the state's use of force policy, anytime you draw your firearm out of the holster is considered use of force, whether it's displayed or pointed. So the difference between displayed is if you pull it out and you're walking up to a car that's very suspicious, you have it ready, but that's just displayed. Pointing is get out of the car, or whatever the reason being, they have to point their weapon. So There's been no discharge, it's just pointing or display. And that's all per the use of force policy standards mandates that you have to report those things. Anything beyond non-compliant handcuffing is considered use of force.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to number 7, which is to discuss and consider approving 312, which is transfers and reassignments. This starts, first page with the note, the policy, the purpose, contents, and then we move to definitions. Anybody have any questions on that first page? Moving to page 2, which involves number 2, which is the transfer, and number 3, which is special assignments and positions. Questions there? Okay. Moving to the next page, which covers item number 4, which is selection, and 5, which talks about the cancellation procedure, and the index and signature page. Is there anything on that page? If that's the case, that's an easy one. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of 312, transfers and reassignments, say aye. 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 Sandy, that was an aye? Thank you. Next is 314, peer support program. Again, on the first page, we have the note, the policy, the purpose, the contents, and the beginning of definitions. Any questions there? Moving to the next page, we move to the peer support team. There's no questions there.
Oh, I'm sorry, the peer support team, is that going to be like a hired, or is it peer support manager? Is that just someone you're designating in the department?
Yeah, it'll just be an assignment, a Jones assignment, if you.
Okay, anything else on page 2? Moving to page 3, which includes the balance of number 2, the peer support team. I have something under E, the second bullet point. It talks about a program coordinator will convene a board.
Mhm.
There's no discussion about the board makeup. Is that at the coordinators? Doesn't say whether it's 3, 5, 7. It doesn't say if it needs to have officers and residents.
No, it doesn't, it's just, so it'll be all members of the PD, but, it could just be, there could be 2 of them.
Okay.
There could be 3 of them, depending, and you'll see as it goes on, how it talks about in consultation with the chief, successful candidates will be appointed. To be a peer support individual, you have to go through peer support training, obviously. And there's a whole bunch of things that we'll look at, obviously, if you're an individual that's compassionate and you go to the training, those things will be looked at. Conversely, if you're an individual that doesn't get along well with peers, for whatever reason, those folks wouldn't be on the team, but there's no designation of how many or how little, that will back us into a wall of saying, there shall be 5.
Okay, so it's, okay, and that's why I was just wanted to find out if you were expecting to have residents or whether it might be someone from the back committee, but you're saying that it's all PD.
It's all PD.
And no administrative.
Yeah, hence peer, so they can feel open to talk about whatever they want.
Well, this is to interview and select the peer supporters,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. The next section talks about notification and activation. Does anybody have any questions down at the bottom of page 3? We'll flip to page 4. This covers the peer support team guidelines. Any questions there? Moving over to page 5. Under I, employees should use peer councils as a referral source for appropriate and may, with or without anonymity, provide the name of a fellow officer or employee for discreet and confidential intervention. And I'm just wondering, yeah, I've managed people for a lot of years. You'll have someone who, how do you weed out anything that might be punitive as opposed to being constructive?
So this isn't designed for punitive, for instance, specifically speaking to that section that you're talking about. If an employee recognizes that another employee, say they're going through a divorce and they notice, you know, they're getting angry with the public, they may have a use of force issue, and all that was in that one policy about the performance monitoring, if you remember that policy. They can bring that forth and they can say, you know, hey, we want to get this person the help before anything goes awry. Nothing is punitive about that.
Okay.
Obviously, if, you know, if there's an issue that comes up, where, say, they committed domestic assault on their partner, then yes, that has to be dealt with. But as far as getting help, it's nothing.
Okay. So you're saying that there'd be very little opportunity for you and I have a beef about something. I sell you a car and the car falls apart and I'm saying that's too bad. And you choose to say to a peer counselor that I am angry or I am something like that. That's the kind of punitive things that I was talking about in between one person who's recommending to a peer counselor that someone might need or someone should be spoken to about needing.
Right, and that's under the auspices of that team, that would be weeded out. Like they're not gonna look at that and say, you know, that's not an issue.
Okay.
Just because you have a little disagreement or whatever you say.
Okay. Letter 5 is diffusing. I noticed under letter A, underneath that, the last says quiet location away from at the scene.
Away from the scene. Thank you for that.
And then under debriefing, number 6, on that page, letter C. Only those members involved in the critical incident will be permitted to attend the debriefing and or diffusing.
Yes. And the reason being is, when you have a whole group of individuals together talking about it, you don't invite people that weren't there that have no bearing on it. Only the counselors, whether they're there or not, they're running it. But only the folks that were involved in the incident, be it a dispatcher that was on duty at the time and the officers. Because you don't want, and that's standard guideline for these types of things. You don't want people just offering their advice, and you don't want
Second guessing or
second guessing. You don't want people to feel uncomfortable about talking. Everybody is aware of what the incident was, so that's a standard guideline.
Okay. The last item on that page is item 7, general duties. There's only one item there that says the peer support team coordinator. I expect there's no question there. Moving to the back side of that is the cancellation, the index, and the signature page. Are there any questions there? Hearing none, then I would look for a motion to approve the 314 peer support with that one minor grammatical change.
Motion to approve.
Sandy with a second. Is there any further discussion here? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Next is 316. Line of duty death. One of those unfortunate items that we have to look at. Again, we have no policy, the purpose, content, and the beginning of definitions on page 1. Is there any question? Moving to page 2, we have notifications. Any question on that page? Moving on to page 3, hospital liaison. Are the liaisons, talks about the next highest, the chief will join the family next highest ranking. And is, so assuming, let's say it was the deputy chief, for instance, they would perform the liaison duty going forward. I guess what I'm wondering is at some point, would someone be assigned, would somebody else be assigned to that?
Is what that, basically is what that says, is that, say I'm an admin, and something, God forbid, were to happen. The first one there is a sergeant, and that's the highest ranking officer. He would serve, or she would serve as a hospital liaison until the next highest ranking officer can take over, which would be until the deputy chief got there. Once I got there, I took over. And when you read this, if you've ever seen on TV, you know, when they have like Blue Bloods or one of those police shows where an officer was shot in the line of duty or died in the line of duty. I see all those folks coming in, and the commissioner gets there, and it's along the same lines. It's just giving guidelines so there's not chaos and there's something for them to follow.
And that is that something that is taught? Is it being that liaison and knowing, is there a list somewhere so that if
There's
the
not.
sergeant?
There's not, there are standards and it's discussed, but it's not really training to be fit into this.
Right. I'm just wondering, like, if there's certain things, and you go through some of the weighting facilities and then those kinds of things. Okay. Anything else under hospital liaison? The next item on that page is office liaison. Questions there? We'll flip to page 4, which is covers family liaison and benefits coordinator. Moving to page 5, if there's no questions there, it covers line of duty death benefits. I'm glad to see that there's a number of items listed there for the officers and their families and the chief. Moving to page 6, number 8 is family support advocate. Any questions on that page? Going to page number 7, the last item before cancellation is protocol. I just had the last bullet point there. Officers attending funerals involving law enforcement officers from outside the surrounding jurisdiction will wear the mourning band over the badge while attending the funeral and will be removed immediately after the burial of the deputy or officer. That's our officers attending outside, or that's
Yes,
other
that's,
officers
that's
attending?
our officers, from outside of surrounding jurisdiction. So hypothetically speaking, if something were to happen to a Barre Town officer, that would not apply. They would wear, there's a certain period that you wear it for, and that's covered in the first bullet.
Okay.
If you were to go, say, over to New Hampshire, say somebody from Lebanon Police Department, and we send officers down there, you're only allowed to wear that, and again, that's national standard, you're only supposed to wear that until, they're
The last couple of items on there is cancellation, the index, and the signature page. Is there anything, any questions on the rest of that?
Not on there, but I'm just more curious, what maybe is covered in a different policy, what is the protocol of the department for the surviving officer? So I guess we're about in here, like, what sort of like trauma / therapy does the department go through? Because there are, it's a trauma for everyone who works, obviously, it's one off the loss.
And that would be covered under peer support and all those, the other policies that talk about EAP and those things.
Good question, Council. Thank you.
That would
Anything
be
else?
considered a critical incident, which
Right,
is.
that's what I was just trying, I figured the puzzle was there.
Yes.
All right. We have questions, but no substantive changes, so I would entertain a motion to approve item, policy number 316, line of duty death.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Sandy. Unanimous approval again. Going to number 10, discuss and consider approving number 416, court orders for protection. Again, front page talks about the note, the policy, the purpose, the contents, and the beginning of the definitions. Questions? Moving to page 2. Continues with definition and request for relief. And number 2.
The majority of this is all statutory.
I assume. Didn't stop me from making a few notes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
You know, gotta keep you on your toes. Moving to page 3, number 3, temporary relief from abuse order, abuse protection order. Any questions there? We'll move to page 4, continues that and goes to number 4, which is final let me try that again. Final relief from abuse protection order, and also is the start of number 5, temporary and final relief from abuse protection orders on behalf of a child. Questions on this page? We'll move to page 5, which is a continuation of number 5, temporary and final relief from abuse protection orders on behalf of a child. Moving to page 6, we begin number 6, temporary and final relief from abuse protection orders on behalf of a vulnerable adult. Questions there? Going to page number 7, we have number 7, which is an order against stalking. Number 8, which is an extreme risk protection order. Can I just add a question there, Chief? Again, you say it's all statute. It says a state's attorney or the office of the attorney general may file that motion or petition. No one else may file that? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions there? Moving to page 8, which includes number 9, office procedures for temporary and final protection orders. number 10, which is service of protection orders. Hearing no questions, we'll move to page 9, which has number 11 at the top, which is procedures after service. And 12, which is sanctions for violating the order. And cancellation, index, and the signature page. Any questions there? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve number 416, court orders for protection. I will second. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 3 ayes. Policy, the motion pass. Number 11, to discuss and consider approving number 309, attendance and leave. Thank you.
Before we dive into specific languages, I'm just curious as to what you did in terms of the union contract.
This is, a lot of the union contract is replicated in here. Because these are, again, these are the standards that CALIA uses, and you have to just speak to it, so I'd have to go to the CBA and say, okay, this is it.
I have the same question.
Yeah, it all aligns with either the CBA or it talks in there about like the software that we use for scheduling, and all that stuff, so everything is all up to snuff with what goes on there. There are a couple of things that aren't discussed in the collective bargaining agreement, like lateness of members, inclement weather conditions, and those things, and that's policy. Because there have been some issues in the past with lateness and.
Jack yelled at me so bad when I tried to test this.
Okay, so would it be a fair assumption that once the new CBA is passed, if there's any substantial
If there's any changes,
this will
I don't
come back to us?
Yeah.
Okay, it talks about, and I have this on the front page because it's mentioned a number of times, exempt members would be the chief, deputy chief, or?
Yes, so it follows the guidelines of non-exempt and exempt and labor law.
I assume, but I just want to make sure. Okay, so again, front page with attendance and leave says note, talks about the policy, the purpose, the contents, and has definitions, which continues on page 2. Number 2 on page 2 is punctuality, one of my favorites. Number 3 is lateness of members.
Did you choose 16 minutes just as like everyone gets a 15-minute grace period, basically, when you're running late with traffic?
Well, it's not necessarily a grace period. It talks like excusable lateness of less than 16 minutes, so it's a 15-minute. You know, if you're always late for 15 minutes, you're gonna fall into another category here. And like I said, the employees that I'm thinking of don't necessarily work here anymore. They were here when I got here. So, you know, they would have fell into this policy.
Yes. Lateness is a pet peeve of mine as well. I think it's disrespectful to the other people who have to pick up the slack when they're late.
Well,
There are latenesses, but constant latenesses.
Not only that, if you have a minimum staffing standard, individuals late, the other person staying over 15 minutes, we have to pay them overtime.
Yeah.
So it costs.
I don't have that in my business. Just not remembering anybody there except for people except for me. Okay, that was number 3, lateness of members. Is there anything else on that page? We'll move to page 3, which is the continuance of lateness of members and talks about inclement weather conditions under number 4. And the number 5, which is approval required with the increments of which. Anything on page 3? Move to page 4. So I'm assuming it's the 1/4 hour increments, accepting sick leave.
And that's contractual language, and it's in the contract that sick leave has to be used at 1 hour increments. Yeah. Again, it's all.
It's all like, this was 3 years ago now, so this is all just coming back.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
all, it's
Yeah.
all.
Number 6 is holiday leave. We're continuing on page 4. And going to number 7, which is also on page 4, annual and personal leave. Again, I'm assuming that comes right out of CBA. It's just the annual leave on page 5.
Right out of the contract.
I have a question on the annual leave. I have a question on the annual leave. Under where it says all the years and the days, there's a bullet point. It starts with all vacation time will be taken. And then the last sentence says, however, vacation time earned in the prior year may be carried over into the following year. I feel like it's saying 2 different things, but I probably just don't understand it.
Your bullet point underneath. It does.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So
that-
vacation time cannot be carried over.
Vacation time can be carried over, up to 2 years technically, per the CBA. And that, I'll have to check the CBA because that may have been contract language, which kind of contradicts itself. So
Okay.
I will check. Thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of this did come verbatim out of the contract. So I'll look at that and see. It's probably supposed to say personal. Yeah.
Personal vacation was the conversation.
Yeah,
Because there was a worry about.
because it does say down below, it says personal leave shall be used in the fiscal year in which it accrues, shall be forfeited. So I'll check onto that and make the necessary adjustment.
Okay. Just since you're going into it, you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 different length of service with different accrual days for vacation.
Would you like to be on the negotiating table?
Unfortunately, I cannot be. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yes, there's, again, contractual,
And my favorite is if you look at, sorry, if you look at 7 years, 8 years, and 9 years, for whatever reason, that arbitrary is half of it.
Half of it, yeah, I saw.
hey, you negotiated the contract before I got here, so.
All right. So, personal leave down below there. Is there any question down to, number 8, sick leave? Okay, so, number 8, sick leave at the bottom of page 5, is there any question on that first paragraph? We'll move to page 6, which continues talking about family sick leave and the supervisor responsibility thereof. We'll move to page 7, which talks about the misuse of sick leave. Curiosity,
Yes.
CBA? Or is that part of your, the misuse of it?
So it's not in the CBA.
Okay.
So if you look in the first bullet where it says Title 21 VSA 483, it specifically outlines in statute about what you can use sick leave for. So anything here does not contradict that.
Okay.
However, if you have individuals, that are abusing their sick leave that can be ferreted out. And again, it would be a case-by-case basis looking at that. For instance, it didn't happen here, it happened on my prior agency, where an individual looked out sick, but quote unquote accidentally left their airline ticket on the copier to accompany their boyfriend out of state to a job interview. That was abuse of sick leave. So things like that, it does go case by case basis. Because you will have employees, some have sick family members and they may use more sick time than others. But there are some that, for lack of a better term, use it like candy and are foreseeable.
Fortunately, that's the exception, and not the norm. Number 9, injury and sick leave reports. Flipping over to page 8.
Most of this stuff here, or this one too?
Most of this is labor law. It's not necessarily in the CBA, it is labor law. Whatever is not in the CBA has to follow labor law guidelines. Workers' comp as well.
Yeah, I couldn't remember it specifically reporting section, but that's why I asked.
So, under letter C, that is labor law.
Yes.
So the interesting thing that I picked up on, and maybe I'm misreading this, but it says, should a member that has an illness that is of a confidential nature, the member may substitute the diagnosis of the illness or injury with the words personal illness on the initial report. Then it talks about, as you get to the bottom, it says the occupational health care provider will be responsible for the determination of the employee's ability to meet the essential job functions and will communicate the findings with the chief and director of human resources, safety, and health. And I guess the assumption is they're going to be able to make that determination without breaking the confidentiality.
Yes.
Okay.
So, for instance, say a member contracts AIDS or HIV, they could put personal illness in because they don't, want everybody picking on them or whatever. But if there is an illness that affects their ability to meet their job functions, then they would have to go to the healthcare provider and they would have to determine whether they could meet those essential job functions or not.
Under letter E, reporting pregnancies. The decision to request limited duty status or remain on regular duty status rests with the pregnant member. And I guess my wife and I never had children, so I've never had my spouse be pregnant, but I just wonder, as a manager of people, is there a point where that choice may not be in the best interest of the department or of the person who is requesting to continue on regular duty? What's the line? How is that line drawn?
Yes, but again, by labor law, they have the ability to say, I want to continue working. If it's to their detriment, they make that choice.
Okay. And that was the note I wrote down, is where's the liability?
We did have, since I've been here, we did have one officer, she was a detective, that worked here, that was pregnant, came in, reported that she was pregnant, and again, myself working with Rick Taft, went through this whole thing, saying, you tell us when you feel that you want to go out, because I couldn't tell her that.
Right, it would be more difficult as a patrol officer, I would think.
Yes,
Because you
and
never know when you're gonna be.
I
rolling
would
around on the
suffice to
ground.
say that the majority of individuals in uniformed patrol work that get pregnant and go through this process usually make the right decision and want to protect their child or family and say, you know, I request that you do, I don't want to be able, because they could get in a fight, they could get kicked, anything like that.
Okay. Going to page 9, which covers duty status and medical status, covers full duty, limited duty, and regular leave.
And he's out at that time, so she requested. This is that, return to duty down in E that we were talking about.
Yes. Yeah. Prior to that, I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
There's, we've talked about sick leave and such. There's no mention, and I'm assuming it's just covered in the CBA, but there's been no mention anywhere of short-term disability or long-term disability. So would the CBA just cover that?
So that's, it does talk about disability leave in the CBA, but that's all following FMLA and workers' comp guidelines. All
Here it is, okay.
Yeah, the 12-month period, right? It's FMLA leave.
Okay. Okay. And then letter E there is the return to duty certificate, uniform personnel. That was one of the things that I called the chief on today. I wasn't sure who provided the healthcare provider certificate of member disability, which is in the first paragraph there. That is the healthcare provider. So that's not something we needed to see, but I did ask. It talks about in the first bullet point, requires a signed essential job functions questionnaire. And the chief has presented that to us. And if it's okay, I'm going to take about 30 seconds just to look over it. I'm assuming we can't make any changes to it or suggestions, but I just want to see. Sorry, Sandy.
That's okay, I'm familiar with them.
Okay.
Do similar things at work.
As you read through them, you can see it's all pretty much what a police officer may be required to expect in the line of duty.
And then the explanation sheet is here for anything that they say. Yeah. Just for anybody that might watch this afterwards, there's questions. Employee would be capable of firing a patrol rifle or shotgun and would meet proficiency requirements. Can they sit for an extended period of time in a vehicle or patrol vehicle? Are you capable of properly using, wearing, and carrying a protective helmet? Those are the kinds of questions that are on the questionnaire. Chief, thank you for providing that to us. Okay, that's page 9. Any other questions? Moving over to page 10. Letter F is return to duty certificates for the civilian members. Number 11 is compensatory leave. And letter A, non-exempt members must select either the appropriate overtime code or compensatory time for comp accrued prior to end of each pay cycle.
And that is in our scheduling payroll system, where if you work overtime and you want to take comp time for it, you have to choose the appropriate code so you get it accrued. Otherwise, it's going to be paid.
Okay. It just read strangely to me. Overtime code or compensatory time for comp accrued.
Right.
Comp time
So
accrued?
if they want it in comp time, they have to request it. If they don't want it in comp time, they have to put the appropriate overtime code. Unfortunately, again, this was prior to me getting here, they have like 20 different overtime codes, depending on what shift and what percentage and
What day it is.
what day it is, and if the moon's full, or
Special circumstances.
That doesn't make it difficult for the payroll person at all.
no,
Not at all.
Number 12 is also at the bottom of page 10, which is administrative. I'm sorry.
Under comp leave, the members can only accrue maximum 40 to 80 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing.
Thank you.
Later in that sentence,
Yeah.
hour and then it's 40 to 80.
I don't know what happened there.
Nor do I remember what this was before me.
It's 80.
Is it 80?
It's 80.
No, roll. Oh, because we were trying to talk about tomorrow.
Okay, so that is page 10. Oops. Sorry. Page 11 has number 13, which is bereavement leave. I'm assuming that is per the CBA.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions for that? 14, military leave. Moving over to page 12. I thought I had you for a minute, Chief. I had to go to the USARA site and look it up. For some reason, I thought healthcare benefits had to continue to be paid if somebody was on military duty for more than 30 days or less than 2 years. But it was right there in great big bold print. I can't question that, but I wanted you to know I tried. Page 12. Going to page 13. I'm assuming that letter E, the in-processing reintegration, is that first bullet point, is that a BCPD or is that also USARA and?
That is BCPD.
Okay.
And you'll see the last bullet point, which the policy is not out yet.
Yeah.
There's an entire policy that, you know, if you have somebody that gets activated and is gone for 2 or 3 years, they will have special requirements on coming back. They'll have to go through field training all over again, different things, law updates and all those things.
And I guess one of my questions, it says all returning employees. So, it
Yes,
says have to do 30 hours. I'm assuming that's only if they're in excess of 30 days.
so, yes, if you miss, say, a full calendar year, we have a requirement of 30 hours minimum of in-service training, and we have mandatories. We have a certain requirement for so many hours of use of force, de-escalation training. We have to have our firearms proficiency, which is mandatory. Fair and impartial policing, which is mandatory, domestic violence, which is mandatory. So they would miss all those mandatories. They would have to get a waiver and go through all of that.
Okay. So the assumption for letter E is only in something longer
Yes,
than 12 months?
yes.
So would that be addressed in?
Well,
number 3?
12 months or more.
Okay, so it doesn't say that. I'm just wondering, is that, again, this isn't for the average layperson to utilize, this is for your officers. Are they gonna know that, or does it need to be in?
We're gonna,
And will that also, might be addressed in 317 when we see it? Okay, thank you. Number 15, leave of absence without pay. That moves over on to page 14, which includes the cancellation, the signature page, and then the indexes. Are there any questions? So we are not, I'm not going to ask for approval of this one because we're going to have to get the section under annual leave. I don't know how we can even tentatively approve it without knowing.
Check to see if the CBA. I got it on my phone here somewhere.
See, you know where the storage is.
Those annual leave vacation. Vacations. It's not on there, so that should say person. Yes. Personal. Personal time will be
So
taken.
where it says however, it should say personal time, not vacation time.
No, it should say all personal time will be taken during the year in which it is earned. May be used in increments. However, vacation time may be carried over.
Okay. So, is that just that one word change, or does that need to go down under personal leave? I guess the question is, do you want to leave that where it is?
So is what it should say is just that whole bullet should say vacation time earned. Vacation time earned in the prior year may be carried over into the following year. So
Okay. And then
that sentence has to go with the exception of increments equaling 1 quarter or more, because they do say you can use vacation in increments of 1 quarter or more. So I just need to rephrase that paragraph.
do we want to try to hammer that language out now? Or you? The only reason I ask is I'm hesitant, although I will bow to the counselor if he's comfortable. If he thinks council will be comfortable, I know the chief will get us the information.
Yeah, as long as it's consistent. I think we're all saying that he's going to make it.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it consistent, rephrase it. It's just a error in saying all vacation time will be taken during the year.
Okay. Then. So I guess I would look for a motion to approve with the changes as discussed. Is that appropriate, Counselor? Okay with that? Somebody want to make that motion? I will second. There's no further discussion. I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. So, policy 309, attendance and leave is unanimously approved. And we will move on to number 12, which is miscellaneous. I have one little item for miscellaneous, and that is after hearing that Councilor Wozniak is typically the lone member to sit on any of the negotiating committees. I applaud you, having done it a number of times myself. And I know that it is not easy. So thank you for doing that for the city. Anything else? Kristen, you always have something.
I do have something, but I have to get my phone out.
Okay.
I just want to give Bob a quick shout out for being named in Governor Phil Scott's 2024 State of State address. So thank you for being a wonderful part of this.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, then I would look for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Or second, sorry.
We have a motion in a second. All those in favor of adjournment? Oh, Connie, you have a question?
Just one thing. I never realized how short-staffed you were down there. And I may have misjudged you, Chief. I'm sorry, when you first came. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Now we have a motion in a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
As usual, you'll have these in your inbox, the updated ones, so forward.
Perfect. Yeah, get them out to Nicholas.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Council, thanks for setting up the owl and all that. You know, Brian showed me 2 years ago, and I've never had to use it, so I would have been really lost. No. Appreciate it. What are you hearing? Is this going to be a containers negotiation?
Oh, hold on.